Something I know for sure is that witches exist and are real. My story begins when we lived in my parents' house, in a little room with a sheet for a bed and wooden windows. By then my daughter had been born. She was 5 months old when it all started. I worked rotating shifts, and my wife told me that when I left for work she stayed up ironing until late. Suddenly the window rattled around midnight, and when she went to look there was nothing. My daughter would start crying very hard. A few days passed and the activity increased little by little. By that time I was already working mornings and staying with them at night. They didn't touch my window. One night I went to the bathroom and could see small fireballs on the hill. I already felt sure they were witches, but I didn't want to believe it because I was superstitious. I told my wife I would keep watching at night. That very night the dogs began to bark uncontrollably and the roosters crowed as if it were dawn. Suddenly I heard a savage lament. My skin crawled and I couldn't move. I couldn't sleep that night and was very nervous. The next day I told my parents what happened. Like many people, they didn't believe me and said it was a bad dream. But I clearly knew what I'd heard. A few weeks later we were all sleeping when at 2 a.m. something slammed against the sheet covering our bed so hard it sounded like a large stone being thrown. It wasn't a stone. When we heard the loud noise my daughter began to cry. I heard, as if a bird walked across us, nails scratching the sheets. Looking toward the windowsill I saw a black bulge pass through a narrow corridor outside. That image would not leave me. Time passed. One night the three of us slept in the same bed when suddenly we heard another loud bang and my daughter started crying again, louder than before. When I looked for her she was on the floor, crying. I don't know what made me look out the window again, but I saw the same black bulge. This time I heard a shrill whistle receding into the distance. Tired of the situation, we decided to have our daughter baptized as soon as possible because we could not stand it anymore. A few weeks after the baptism I woke suddenly and heard what sounded like a dog or a wolf running at the door of our room. It was such a pathetic howl that it paralyzed me. That night there was absolute silence outside. We had no dogs and the neighbors' dogs did not bark. When I heard that sound my blood ran cold. My whole body stiffened and I felt like screaming. Every time I tell this, a chill runs down my spine. It's been 5 years. I already have my own home and I'm going to be a father again. Lately something worries me. We've heard knocking on the window at dawn. Even my daughter has woken us up, and this time the knocks come at the window on the second floor. My wife has recently dreamed that a large bird stands next to her and pins her so she can't move. In the morning the place where she says the bird stood hurts badly. I have also dreamed we were walking when, out of nowhere, 3 huge turkeys came out trying to snatch our baby. I don't know what will happen, but this time I'll be prepared. My wife is about to give birth and the dreams are increasing. I just hope someone can give me advice because I don't want to go through the same thing again. In 2011 my first daughter was born. Those were very rainy days. On the 5th day after she was born the rain got heavy. The day before my sister, my mom and my husband and I had started talking about witches, those that steal babies. It is worth mentioning that my husband and I did not believe in that. Still, having a newborn made it a worry. That night my sister called and told me to take good care of the baby. I replied that I would. I always had the habit of laying my baby on the bed. My mother-in-law told me not to lay her down like that because she might fall, but I didn't listen. At 11:30 p.m. I felt very sleepy, my eyes were heavy. Before falling asleep I laid the baby next to me, against the wall so she wouldn't fall. At dawn I heard her crying loudly. I looked for her in the bed but she wasn't there. To my surprise she was on the floor, upside down, lying on top of a flip-flop. Everyone woke up and angrily said, "See? We told you not to lay her on your chest." I tried to explain that I had placed her at my side against the wall. We had to take her to emergency to make sure she was okay. The doctor checked her and said she was fine, nothing broken. I repeat, My daughter was only days old. At that age you might think it was a spasm or cramp, but there were no physical signs. From that day my husband and I concluded a witch had come that night and tried to steal our daughter. We still think about it, especially in the rainy season. My grandmother was a wise woman who always had a story to tell. During her childhood she saw moments of great anguish. She wasn't paranoid or openly spiritual, but she faced many paranormal situations. Because of her sensitivity and open mind, she witnessed countless horrible things that she later told with a mixture of humor and respect. Her knowledge and experience she passed on to me with each story over coffee in the afternoons, with a roll and butter. She told me about apparitions, the devil, ghosts, and strange family happenings. This is one of those family stories. My great-grandmother lived in a region near Dolores Hidalgo, in Guanajuato. She knew the hard life in the countryside. She married and had 6 children. They worked a rented plot for a landowner who held much power in the area. The children helped plow the fields and herd cattle, while the woman stayed at home caring for the household. In that community women lived very modestly. One day a sinister woman came to live in the town and was said to be a healer. Over time she gained the trust of the town's women. She dressed neatly and said she could cure the evil eye that bothered many children. But then things began to go wrong. Crops failed, cattle died under a great drought, and children fell ill with a strange sickness carried by leeches and fleas during the heatwave. Every family suffered illness or deepened poverty. Strangely, the healer seemed to prosper. Her plants did not dry up and her animals were healthy. People began to suspect and envy her. Men whispered she had a pact with the devil. Women cursed her, blaming her for their children's illness, and my grandmother organized the women to try to drive the curandera out. One morning they all gathered in the chapel and marched to the healer's house, armed with sticks and stones. They surrounded her home. The woman calmly came out to face them as they shouted and began to throw stones. Chaos broke out as secrets and infidelities were shouted and revealed among the women. Accusations led to fights. While the curandera watched from her house satisfied, the women in the street turned on each other. That night the men returned from work and, seeing their wives beaten and humiliated, became alarmed. The women manipulated their husbands into removing the healer to avoid further shame. At dawn, armed with machetes and torches, the men tore down the healer's door, dragged her into the square, and tied her. The bells rang and the townspeople gathered to witness her punishment and expulsion. They beat and kicked her. Insults and humiliation did not stop that night. A group of men tied her and a rider, my great-grandfather, pulled the rope, dragging her along the road into the mountains. Her cries echoed through the town. The men chased them into a ravine and they disappeared into the mountain. In the morning, the sun rose and nothing more was said about the woman's fate. Everyone assumed she had been killed and buried in the mountain. Her house was burned, her belongings taken, and even her dog was found dead. That was the end of the matter for many. The following year things at first seemed to improve for the town. But then misfortune returned to my family. The granary of my great-grandfather failed, they produced less, they fell ill and suffered shortages. My great-grandmother fell seriously ill with inexplicable fevers and then miraculously recovered overnight. But the suffering had only begun. When they went to church to give thanks, she fell to the floor convulsing horribly. She arched her body in impossible ways and spoke blasphemies in a hoarse, hateful voice. 6 men had to hold her down to take her home. People began to murmur that the family was cursed because my great-grandfather had been involved in the lynching of the healer. Then my great-grandfather confessed a chilling secret. During the lynching he had looted the healer's house before it was burned and taken a peculiar book full of ancient spells. He claimed he never used it, but the bad luck that followed made people suspect the book was to blame. My great-grandmother's symptoms suggested a spirit invasion, a demonic possession. So my great-grandfather and his friend devised a plan. They would go into the mountain and perform a ritual using the book to remove the evil. On the last Friday of April, they rode out at dawn. My great-grandfather, his godfather, and a farmhand who helped on the plot. They carried everything for the ritual into the heart of the forest. For 3 days nothing was heard from them. Then one night only my great-grandfather and the farmhand returned. They stumbled back asking for help. My great-grandfather looked horrified, aged, and full of wrinkles. The farmhand had lost his mind, babbling that something had appeared to them and had massacred the godfather, tearing him apart. He kept repeating, "The devil appeared to us." My great-grandfather hardly spoke. He trembled and any noise terrified him. He slept with a machete beside the door and watched the windows. Days later, in a panic, he ran out of his hut and disappeared into the woods. They never saw him again. The farmhand was later found hanged from a tree. My great-grandmother did not improve. Her attacks continued until one morning, in a convulsion, she slit her own throat. My great-grandmother witnessed the horror. Her mother woke one night with a strange voice, spoke in tongues, stood with a fixed stare, took a knife and simply cut her throat. The screams alerted the others, but it was too late. Gradually the children scattered, emigrating one by one. My grandmother settled here in Tampico, seeking work and a better life. She married and raised my mother and 6 more siblings. Of the other siblings little was known. Of this story only memories remain. My grandmother has since died, but the inheritance of what she taught me lives on.